A frigid wind howled across the desolate landscape as Willa Montgomery stared at the churning waters of the Silverback River, her knuckles white around the reins of her exhausted mare. The spring floods had turned the normally peaceful crossing into a roaring beast, but she had no choice. The only bridge for 50 miles had washed away 3 days ago, and her father was dying. It was 1878, and the Wyoming Territory had little mercy for a woman alone. Willa had received the telegram yesterday at her teaching post in Silverton. Father gravely ill, stop, doctor says days left, stop, come home, stop. 2 years away from her family's homestead, and now she might be too late to say goodbye. Her mare, Penny, snorted nervously, sensing her rider's desperation. Willa patted the horse's neck with a trembling hand. I know, girl, it looks bad, but we have to try. She urged Penny toward the riverbank, the animal's hooves sinking into the mud. The water was running fast, too fast, brown with silt and debris from upstream. Fallen branches rushed past, warning of the danger. Come on, Willa whispered, trying to keep the fear from her voice. We can make it. The mare stepped into the shallows, immediately struggling against the current. Water splashed over Willa's boots as they moved deeper. 10 feet in, the river reached Penny's chest, and Willa felt the animal begin to lose her footing. Steady, she encouraged, even as panic rose in her throat. That's when the log hit them. It came shooting downstream like a battering ram, striking Penny's legs with enough force to send both horse and rider tumbling into the frigid waters. Willa screamed as she was thrown from the saddle, the icy river stealing her breath. The current caught her immediately, spinning her away from her panicked horse. Penny, she cried out, reaching desperately, but the mare was already swimming for the shore they'd left behind, instinct driving her to safety. The river pulled Willa under, her heavy skirts waterlogged and dragging her down. She fought to the surface, gasping and sputtering, only to be dragged under again. Each time she broke free, she was carried further downstream, away from her belongings, away from her route home. Her lungs burned as she thrashed against the current, her strength fading with each passing second. This was how she would die, she realized alone, drowned in a nameless stretch of the Silverback, with her father never knowing she'd tried to reach him. A flash of movement on the shore caught her eye as she surfaced again. A rider on horseback, moving fast along the riverbank, keeping pace with her. She tried to call out, but water filled her mouth, choking her cries. The rider spurred his horse into the shallows, leaning dangerously from the saddle as he extended a long branch toward her. Grab hold. His voice carried over the roar of the water. Willa lunged for the branch, her fingers closing around the rough bark, clinging to it like salvation itself. The man pulled, fighting the current as he dragged her toward shore. His horse braced against the river's pull. With one final heave, Willa felt herself lifted from the water's grasp, dragged unceremoniously onto the rocky riverbank where she collapsed, coughing and trembling. For several minutes, she could do nothing but expel water from her lungs and gasp precious air. When she finally looked up, she saw her rescuer dismounting, his expression grim beneath the shadow of his hat. He was tall and broad-shouldered, a true frontiersman with a sun-weathered face and eyes the color of a summer storm. A leather vest hung open over his cotton shirt, and the pistol at his hip had clearly seen use. "What in God's name were you thinking?" he demanded, towering over her. "That river's killed men twice your size." Willa pushed herself to her knees, dignity somewhat restored despite her sodden appearance. "My father is dying. I need to reach Pine Ridge before it's too late." The man's gaze softened slightly, but his frown remained. "You aim to cross alone." "That's a fool's errand, miss. I have no choice." Willa squeezed water from her sleeve, shivering in the afternoon chill. The bridge is out and there's no ferry for miles." The stranger shook his head, reaching down to help her stand. His hand was rough with calluses but surprisingly gentle. "Name's Noah Calloway. I run cattle on the North Range." "Willa Montgomery," she replied, her teeth chattering. "I taught at the school in Silverton." Noah looked back at the raging river, then at her bedraggled form. "Your horse make it?" "Yes," she returned to the other side. Willa felt tears threatening. Everything she owned was in those saddlebags, the last of her money, her father's letter, clean clothes. "But all my belongings." "You're lucky it was just your belongings and not your life," Noah said sharply. He whistled for his horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion that approached with obvious training. "Come on. You need dry clothes and a fire before you catch your death." "But my father—" "You ain't getting to Pine Ridge today, Miss Montgomery, not with that river between us and the North Road." Noah's tone brooked no argument. "My cabin's a half-hour ride from here. We'll get you warmed up, then figure out how to get you home." Willa wanted to protest, to insist they find a way across immediately, but reality was setting in along with the bone-deep chill. She was soaked through, miles from anywhere, and the day was waning. With reluctance, she nodded. Noah helped her onto his horse, then swung up behind her, one arm securing her against his chest as he took the reins. The warmth of him at her back was immediate and undeniable, a contrast to her sodden clothes that made her shiver all the more. "You always this determined to kill yourself?" he asked as they set off at a steady trot. "Only when it matters," Willa answered, her voice still unsteady from the cold. She felt rather than saw his small smile. "Well, Miss Montgomery, you ain't dying with the wind in your hair. Not today, at least." As they rode toward shelter, Willa couldn't help but notice the strength in the arm that held her, or the solid presence at her back. For a moment, despite everything, she felt safe. Noah's cabin proved to be more substantial than Willa had expected. Built of solid pine logs with a stone chimney, it sat in a natural clearing surrounded by aspen trees. A small corral stood to one side, where 3 other horses watched their approach with mild interest. "It's not much," Noah said as he helped her down from the saddle, "but it keeps the weather out." Inside was simple but comfortable, a main room with a stone fireplace, a wooden table with chairs, and a separate sleeping area partially screened by a woven blanket. Shelves lined one wall, filled with supplies and books that surprised Willa with their variety. "You read Dickens?" she asked, noticing a well-worn copy of Great Expectations. Noah almost looked embarrassed as he set about lighting the fire. "Man's got to do something during winter storms." As the fire caught, spreading blessed warmth through the cabin, Noah disappeared behind a trunk and returned with clothing. "These belonged to my sister when she stayed here last summer," he explained, handing Willa a simple blue dress and woolen shawl. "They might be a bit large, but they're dry." "Thank you," Willa said, clutching the clothes. "I don't know how to repay your kindness." "Start by not trying to drown yourself again," he replied with a hint of humor, then pointed to a screen in the corner. "You can change there. I'll make some coffee." Behind the privacy screen, Willa peeled off her sodden garments with difficulty. The dress Noah provided was indeed a bit loose, but clean and blessedly dry. When she emerged, she found him at the stove, the rich aroma of coffee filling the cabin. "You look better," he observed, pouring the dark liquid into 2 tin cups. "Less like a drowned rat." "Your flattery is overwhelming," Willa retorted, but found herself smiling as she accepted the steaming cup. The first sip spread warmth through her chest. Noah's expression grew serious as he sat across from her at the table. "Now, tell me about this desperate journey of yours." Willa explained about her father's illness, the telegram, and her teaching position in Silverton. As she spoke, she watched Noah's face, noting the subtle shifts in his expression: concern, understanding, and something else she couldn't quite name. "Pine Ridge is still a good day's ride from here," he said when she finished. "And that's if the river crossing at Eagle Pass is passable." "I have to try," Willa insisted. "Even if I'm too late, I need to be there." Noah ran a hand through his hair, which Willa now noticed was a rich brown with hints of copper in the firelight. "I know that pass. It's dangerous even in good conditions. Will you help me find it?" she asked, meeting his gaze directly. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "We'll start at first light, but if the pass is flooded, we find another way. I'm not fishing you out of another river." "Agreed," Willa said, relief flooding through her. "Thank you, Mr. Calloway." "Noah," he corrected, rising to check something simmering in a pot on the stove. Out here, formalities seem foolish. They ate a simple but hearty stew of venison and vegetables, the kind of fare that restored both warmth and strength. As they ate, Noah asked about her teaching, and Willa found herself sharing stories of her students, the small triumphs and frustrations of molding young minds on the frontier. "You sound like you love it," Noah observed. "I do," Willa admitted. "But my father's been alone since my mother passed 3 years ago. I worry about him. No siblings, 2 brothers, both married with families in California." Willa stared into her empty bowl. "I'm the only one close enough to help him." Noah nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Family's important out here. It's all we have sometimes." As night fell, he insisted she take the bed while he made do with a bedroll near the fire. Despite her exhaustion, Willa lay awake for some time, listening to the wind outside and the occasional shift of logs in the fireplace. In the morning, they would ride for Pine Ridge, and she would either make it in time or she wouldn't. The thought brought both anxiety and a strange peace. She was doing everything possible. She drifted to sleep, thinking of storm-gray eyes and the strength of the arms that had pulled her from the river. Dawn brought clear skies, but an undeniable chill. Noah was already up when Willa emerged from behind the screen, dressed again in her own clothes, now dried by the fire overnight. "Weather's holding," Noah said, passing her a plate with fried potatoes and bacon. "We should make good time if we start soon." They ate quickly, and Willa helped clean up, noting how efficiently Noah packed supplies for the journey. He moved with the practiced ease of a man accustomed to self-reliance, yet there was nothing harsh about him. "You've lived out here long?" she asked as they stepped outside into the crisp morning air. 8 years, he replied, saddling his horse with practiced motions. "Came west after the war, looking for someplace that made sense." "Did you find it?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. He paused, hands stilling on the saddle strap. "Most days. The land doesn't lie, at least." He helped her mount a dappled gray mare, explaining she was gentle but sure-footed, perfect for the trail ahead. "Her name's Sage. She'll treat you right if you do the same." The journey began smoothly enough, following a winding trail through pine forests that gradually climbed into rockier terrain. Noah led the way, occasionally pointing out landmarks or signs of wildlife. He was knowledgeable about the land in a way that spoke of deep connection rather than mere familiarity. "Those tracks are from a mountain lion," he explained at one point, indicating marks in the soft earth beside the trail. "Fresh, too. Passed through early this morning. Should we be concerned?" Willa asked, eyeing the surrounding brush with new wariness. Noah shook his head. "They avoid people when they can, but it never hurts to stay alert." By midday, they reached a ridge that offered views across miles of rugged country. Noah reined in, pointing southeast. "Pine Ridge is beyond those foothills. The pass we're heading for is through that notch in the mountains." Willa shaded her eyes, taking in the vast landscape. "It's beautiful." "That it is." There was genuine appreciation in Noah's voice. Easy to forget when you're fighting it every day. They continued on, the trail growing steeper and more challenging. Twice they had to dismount to lead the horses around particularly difficult sections. Despite her determination, Willa found herself tiring, the previous day's ordeal taking its toll. Noah noticed. "We'll rest at the stream ahead." Not much farther. The promised stream appeared a short time later, a clear, rushing brook cutting through a small meadow. They dismounted, allowing the horses to drink while they stretched their legs. Willa splashed cool water on her face, refreshing herself. When she straightened, she found Noah watching her, his expression thoughtful. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. He seemed to debate whether to speak, then said, "Most women I know would be falling apart after what you've been through. You're made of stronger stuff." "Necessity," Willa replied, though the compliment warmed her. "When you're responsible for 30 children in a one-room schoolhouse, you learn to be resilient." "Is that what took you to Silverton?" "Teaching, partly." She sat on a sun-warmed rock, looking out across the meadow. "After my mother died, the farm became empty. My father encouraged me to take the teaching position, said I was wasting my education helping him grow corn. Was he right?" Willa considered this. "Maybe. I love teaching, but I've missed home more than I expected." Noah nodded, understanding in his eyes. Home has a way of calling us back, even when we think we've moved on. There was something in his tone that suggested personal experience, but Willa didn't press. Instead, she asked, "What about your family? You mentioned a sister." "Margaret. She's in Denver now, married to a banker." A fond smile touched his lips. "Too civilized for my taste, but she seems happy." "And your parents," a shadow crossed his face, "lost Pa in the war. Ma followed 2 winters later, pneumonia." "I'm sorry," Willa said softly. Noah shrugged, but she could see the old pain beneath the casual gesture. "It was a long time ago. Margaret and I made our way west after that. She took to city life, I took to open country. Works out for both of us." He checked the position of the sun. "We should move on. I want to reach the pass before evening." As they continued their journey, Willa found herself watching Noah more closely, the confident set of his shoulders, the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, alert to any danger. There was something reassuring about his presence, a steady reliability that contrasted sharply with the uncertain future awaiting her in Pine Ridge. The trail grew narrower as they approached Eagle Pass, hugging a cliff face with a steep drop to one side. Noah led the way, occasionally calling back warnings about loose stones or tricky footing. Despite her growing fatigue, Willa stayed alert, trusting Sage to follow Noah's stallion. They rounded a bend, and suddenly the pass came into view, a narrow gap between towering rock walls, with the continuation of the trail visible on the far side. Between them, however, rushed a tributary of the Silverback, swollen with spring meltwater. Noah dismounted, surveying the crossing with a practiced eye. "It's higher than usual, but not impossible. The bottom's rocky but solid." Willa climbed down from Sage, joining him at the edge. The water moved swiftly but was much narrower than the main river, perhaps 30 feet across. "We'll take it slow," Noah decided. "I'll go first with Thunder, then you follow with Sage. Keep her head upstream and let her find her footing." He mounted his stallion and urged him forward. The big horse entered the water confidently, moving with careful steps as the current swirled around his legs. At the deepest point, the water reached Thunder's chest, but he maintained his footing, emerging safely on the far bank. Noah turned, gesturing for Willa to follow. "Nice and easy." He called over the rush of water. Willa took a deep breath, mounted Sage, and nudged her forward. The mare hesitated at the water's edge, snorting nervously. "It's all right, girl," Willa murmured, patting her neck. We can do this." Sage stepped into the water, her ears flicking back and forth as she tested each step. Willa kept the reins loose, allowing the horse to choose her path, just as Noah had instructed. The cold water splashed against her boots as they reached the middle of the crossing. That's when they heard a low rumble from upstream that made both horses jerk their heads up in alarm. Noah's expression changed instantly. "Hurry," he shouted. "Get across now." Willa didn't hesitate, urging Sage forward with more urgency. The mare sensed the danger and lunged for the far bank, just as a surge of water and debris came rushing around the bend above them. The flash flood, likely caused by a dam of branches breaking upstream, hit with surprising force. Sage was already scrambling onto solid ground when the wave struck, but the power of it caught her hindquarters, nearly washing her back into the current. Willa clung to the saddle as the mare fought for purchase, her hooves sliding on wet stone. Then Noah was there, grabbing Sage's bridle and hauling with all his strength, helping the panicked horse find solid footing. Together, they stumbled clear of the raging water just as logs and branches rushed through the crossing where they had been moments before. Willa slid from the saddle, her legs trembling with the aftermath of fear. Noah steadied her with a hand on her arm, his face tight with concern. "Are you all right?" She nodded, unable to speak immediately as she watched the crossing, now completely impassable as the flood continued to surge through the narrow gap. "That was too close," Noah muttered, checking Sage for injuries. Finding none, he turned back to Willa. "You handled that well." "I followed your instructions," she replied, finally finding her voice. Many wouldn't have kept their head. He looked at the raging water, then back at her with newfound respect. "You're quite something, Willa Montgomery." The use of her first name sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. "Thank you for helping us," she said quietly. Noah's gaze lingered on her face for a moment before he turned away, checking their supplies. "We should move on. The trail gets easier from here, but we've lost time with that crossing." The path beyond Eagle Pass descended gradually into pine forest, the going indeed easier than the rocky climb they'd navigated earlier. As they rode, Willa found herself watching the set of Noah's shoulders, the confident way he sat in the saddle. There was something undeniably attractive about his quiet competence, his lack of pretense. "How far to Pine Ridge now?" she asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "Another 3 hours' ride," Noah replied, glancing at the sun's position. "We'll make it before dark, but only just." "I've been away too long," Willa admitted. "The country seems both familiar and foreign at the same time." Noah nodded in understanding. "That's how it is when you leave a place. It changes without you, or maybe you're the one who changes." "Both, perhaps," she mused. "I'm not the same person who left 2 years ago." "Teaching will do that," Noah said. "Responsibility shapes a person. You sound like you speak from experience." He was quiet for a moment before answering. "After my parents died, I had to grow up fast. Margaret was still young, needed someone to look out for her. You did well by her from the sound of it." Noah shrugged, though she could see her words had affected him. "I did what needed doing, same as anyone would." "Not everyone," Willa corrected gently. "Some would have walked away from the burden." He glanced back at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Is that what your brothers did, walked away?" The question stung with its accuracy. "They had their own paths," she said diplomatically. "California offered opportunities they couldn't find in Wyoming, and left your father alone," Noah observed. "Not alone," Willa reminded him. "I was there until 2 years ago, and now you're going back." It wasn't a question, but there was something in his tone, approval, perhaps, or simply acknowledgement of a shared value. "Yes," she confirmed, though the simplicity of the answer belied the complexity of her feelings. Going back meant leaving teaching, leaving independence, returning to a life she deliberately stepped away from. They rode in silence for some time, each lost in private thoughts as the trail wound through stands of pine and aspen. Occasionally, Noah would point out a hawk circling overhead or the tracks of deer crossing their path. His awareness of the natural world was impressive, born of years living in harmony with the land. The afternoon was waning when they crested a final ridge, and there in the valley below lay Pine Ridge, a small settlement of perhaps 50 buildings nestled against the base of the mountains. Smoke rose from chimneys, and Willa could make out the church steeple, the general store, and farther out, scattered homesteads. Her heart clenched at the familiar sight. "There it is," she breathed. Noah reined in beside her, following her gaze. "Which one's your father's place?" Willa pointed to a farmhouse set back from the others, near a creek that glinted in the late afternoon sun. "There, the white house with the red barn." They descended into the valley, the horses picking up their pace at the scent of hay and water ahead. As they drew closer to town, Willa felt a strange mixture of homecoming and trepidation. What would she find when they reached her father's farm? Would she be too late? The main street was quiet as they rode through, though a few people glanced their way with curious expressions. Willa recognized the baker's wife, who waved hesitantly, clearly trying to place her after 2 years' absence. "Folks seem to know you," Noah observed. "It's a small town," Willa replied. "Everyone knows everyone." They turned onto the dirt road leading to her father's property. As they approached, Willa could see that the place was well maintained, the fence mended, the fields plowed for spring planting. Someone had been caring for it, despite her father's illness. A woman stepped onto the porch as they approached, shading her eyes against the setting sun. It took Willa a moment to recognize Martha Jensen, the widow who lived on the neighboring farm. "Willa," Martha called, hurrying down the steps as they dismounted. "Oh, thank heavens you've come." "Mrs. Jensen," Willa greeted her, anxiety rising. "My father, is he?" "He's alive, dear," Martha assured her quickly. "Dr. Lewis is with him now. Your timing is providence itself." Relief washed through Willa, leaving her momentarily weak. Noah's hand appeared at her elbow, steadying her without comment. Martha's gaze shifted to Noah, curiosity evident. "And who might this be?" "Noah Calloway," he introduced himself. "I helped Miss Montgomery find her way home." Something knowing flickered in Martha's eyes, but she simply nodded. "Well, Mr. Calloway, any friend of Willa's is welcome here. Come inside, both of you. You look exhausted." The familiar scent of the farmhouse, wood smoke, beeswax, and the herbs her mother had always hung from the kitchen beams brought a rush of memories as Willa stepped inside. Everything was exactly as she remembered, yet somehow different, as though viewed through new eyes. "Your father's in his room," Martha explained, leading the way. "The doctor's been giving him willow bark tea for the fever and some tonic for his lungs. He's been asking for you." Outside her father's bedroom door, Willa hesitated, suddenly afraid of what she would find. Noah remained a respectful distance behind, but his presence gave her strength. "Go on," he encouraged quietly. "He's waiting for you." Willa nodded, took a deep breath, and opened the door. The room was dim, lit only by a single lamp beside the bed where her father lay. Dr. Lewis, a gray-haired man who had delivered most of Pine Ridge's children over the past 30 years, looked up from his patient. "Willa," he greeted her with a tired smile. "I told your father you'd come." James Montgomery turned his head at the sound of her name, his eyes brightening despite the pallor of his face. "Willa, is it really you?" She was at his bedside in an instant, taking his hand between both of hers. It was thinner than she remembered, the skin papery with age and illness, but his grip was surprisingly strong. "I'm here, Pa," she said, fighting tears. "I came as soon as I got the telegram." "My girl," he whispered, a smile creasing his weathered face. "I knew you'd come, Doctor." Lewis rose, gathering his medical bag. "Your father has pneumonia, Willa. It's been a difficult battle, but he's stubborn." "Montgomery's stubbornness," her father confirmed with a weak chuckle that dissolved into coughing. "The fever broke this morning," the doctor continued. "With proper care and rest, I believe he'll recover, though it will take time." Relief flooded through Willa so strongly she had to sit on the edge of the bed. "Thank you, Doctor, for everything." "Martha's been a godsend," her father added, his voice thin but determined. "Checking on me, bringing food, don't know what I'd have done without her." "I've left instructions with her," Dr. Lewis said. "I'll return tomorrow to check on him." He patted Willa's shoulder. "It's good to have you home, my dear." As the doctor left, Willa's father studied her face. "You look tired, daughter. The journey must have been hard." "There were complications," she admitted, "but I had help." "Oh," interest sparked in her father's eyes. "A rancher named Noah Calloway," Willa explained. "He's here, actually. He guided me home when the river crossing was dangerous." "Calloway," her father's brow furrowed. "I've heard that name. Runs cattle north of Eagle Pass, doesn't he?" "Yes," Willa confirmed, surprised. "Do you know him?" "Know of him. Good reputation. Honest in his dealings." Her father squeezed her hand. "I'd like to thank the man who brought my daughter safely home." "I'll bring him in," Willa promised. "But first, tell me how you've been." "Really?" They talked for a short while, her father tiring quickly but clearly determined to reassure her that his illness, while serious, had not left him as frail as she feared. When his eyelids began to droop, Willa kissed his forehead and promised to return soon. She found Noah in the kitchen with Martha Jensen, who was serving him coffee and what appeared to be freshly baked bread. They both looked up as she entered, Martha's face questioning. "He's resting now," Willa reported. "The doctor thinks he'll recover with proper care." "Thank the Lord," Martha said with obvious relief. "I've been so worried. When he collapsed in the field 3 days ago, I thought we'd lost him." "You were the one who found him?" Willa asked, gratitude welling up. Martha nodded. "I bring him dinner most evenings." "When he didn't answer my call, I went looking." She patted Willa's hand. "He's been lonely without you, dear, though he'd never admit it." Guilt twisted in Willa's stomach. "I should have visited more often." "Nonsense," Martha said firmly. "You were building your own life as you should. Now, sit down and eat something before you fall over." Willa obeyed, suddenly aware of her exhaustion and hunger. Noah watched her with quiet concern as Martha bustled about, serving stew and more bread. "Your father seems to be in good hands," he observed after Martha stepped outside to fetch more firewood. "Thanks to Mrs. Jensen," Willa agreed, breaking off a piece of bread. "I had no idea she was looking after him so diligently." Noah's lips quirked in a small smile. "Neighbors out here take care of each other. It's the only way to survive." "He wants to thank you," Willa said after a moment. "When he's stronger." Noah nodded, though he looked slightly uncomfortable with the prospect of gratitude. "No need. I only did what anyone would do." "We both know that's not true," Willa countered gently. "You risked your own safety to help a stranger. That's rare, even out here." Their eyes met across the table, and something passed between them, an understanding, perhaps, or recognition of shared values that went beyond words. Martha returned with an armload of wood, breaking the moment. "Mr. Calloway, I've made up the spare room for you. It's too late to start back tonight." Noah hesitated. "I don't want to impose." "Nonsense," Martha interrupted briskly. "It's the least we can do after you brought our Willa home safely." "Our Willa." The casual phrase caught Willa by surprise. She hadn't realized how deeply Martha cared for her family. Please stay, Willa added. The roads aren't safe after dark, and you must be as tired as I am. Noah relented with a nod. Thank you. I'll see to the horses first. I'll help, Willa offered, rising from the table. Outside, the evening had brought a chill to the air, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. They worked in companionable silence, unsaddling the horses and making them comfortable in the barn. Noah moved with the easy efficiency of a man accustomed to such tasks, while Willa found herself remembering the routine of farm life she'd left behind. You handle horses well, Noah observed as she measured oats for Sage. I grew up with them, Willa replied. My father always kept good stock, said a farmer without a horse was like a bird without wings. Noah smiled at that. Wise man. He is, Willa agreed, then added softly, I almost lost him. But you didn't, Noah reminded her. You made it in time, because of you. She turned to face him fully. I never properly thanked you for saving my life at the river. You don't need to, I do, she insisted. If you hadn't been there. She shuddered at the memory of the churning water, the hopelessness she'd felt as the current dragged her under. Noah stepped closer, his expression serious in the lantern light. When I saw you in that river, I thought I was witnessing the end of someone's story. I couldn't let that happen. You said I wasn't dying with the wind in my hair, Willa recalled. A faint smile touched his lips. My mother used to say that, when I was young and reckless, taking foolish risks. You ain't dying with the wind in your hair, Noah Calloway, she'd tell me. Not while I have breath in my body. She sounds like a remarkable woman. She was. Sadness flickered across his face. I wish she could have seen the man I became. Willa found herself reaching out, touching his arm lightly. I think she would be proud. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken things. Noah's gaze dropped to her hand on his arm, then back to her face. For an instant, Willa thought he might step closer, might the barn door creaked open and Martha's voice called out, Willa, is everything all right out here? They stepped apart, the moment broken. Just finishing up, Mrs. Jensen, Willa called back. We'll be right in. As they walked back to the house, a respectful distance between them, Willa was acutely aware of Noah's presence beside her and of possibilities she hadn't considered before today. The next morning dawned clear and cool, sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows as Willa prepared breakfast. She'd risen early, checking on her father before starting the day's tasks. He was sleeping peacefully, his breathing easier than the night before. Noah appeared in the doorway, his hair still damp from washing, hat in hand. Good morning, he greeted her, seeming almost shy in the domesticity of the kitchen. Good morning, she returned, oddly pleased by his presence. I hope you slept well. Better than on the trail, he acknowledged with a small smile. Can I help with anything? Willa gestured to the coffee pot. You could pour that while I finish these eggs. They worked together easily, setting the table and preparing the meal as though they'd done it countless times before. Martha joined them shortly, smiling at the scene with barely concealed approval. Your father's awake, she informed Willa, asking for you. I'll take him some breakfast, Willa said, preparing a tray. When she returned to the kitchen after feeding her father, she found Noah and Martha in quiet conversation that ceased as she entered. Something in their expressions made her curious, but neither offered an explanation. I should be heading back, Noah said, rising from the table. Got animals to tend to. Disappointment flashed through Willa, though she knew his departure was inevitable. Of course, you've already done more than we had any right to expect. Martha bustled around, packing food for his journey. Nonsense, Mr. Calloway. You're welcome here anytime. Isn't that right, Willa? Absolutely, Willa agreed, perhaps too quickly. We're in your debt. Noah accepted the packed food with thanks, then hesitated, glancing between the two women. If you need anything supplies, help with the planting, send word. My place isn't so far that I can't come back." The offer surprised Willa. "That's very kind, but James will need time to recover," Martha interrupted practically. "Spring planting won't wait, and you can't manage it all yourself, Willa." Noah nodded. "I could spare a few days next week, once I've taken care of things at home." "We couldn't ask that of you," Willa protested, though the idea of seeing him again sent an unexpected thrill through her. "You're not asking, I'm offering." His eyes met hers, steady and sincere. "Neighbors help neighbors, remember. We're hardly neighbors," Willa pointed out. "Your ranch is a day's ride away." Noah's smile was small but genuine. "Close enough in this country." With that settled, they walked together to the barn where Thunder waited, already saddled. The morning sun cast long shadows across the farmyard, birds calling in the trees beyond. "Thank you again," Willa said as Noah checked his saddle, "for everything." He turned to face her, his expression unexpectedly vulnerable. "Will you be staying, now that you're back, I mean?" The question caught her off guard. "I don't know yet. My father needs me now, certainly, after that." She trailed off, realizing she hadn't thought beyond her father's recovery. Noah nodded, understanding in his eyes. "The school in Silverton will miss you, I'd wager." "And I'll miss teaching," she admitted. "But family comes first." "It does," he agreed, mounting Thunder with practiced ease. Looking down at her, he added, "I'll return next week then, to help with the planting." "We'll be here," Willa replied, stepping back as he turned the horse toward the road. She watched him ride away, a curious mixture of emotions swirling within her. Gratitude, certainly, but also something more, something that made her heart beat faster when she thought of his promised return. Martha appeared beside her, a knowing look on her face. "Fine man, that Mr. Calloway." Willa felt herself blushing. "He's been very kind." "Hum," Martha hummed, not fooled for an instant. "The kind that doesn't come along every day." "Mrs. Jensen," Willa protested, though without much conviction. The older woman just chuckled. "Come along, dear. Your father's asking for you again." The days passed in a rhythm of care and work. Willa tended to her father, whose strength returned slowly but steadily under Dr. Lewis's care and her attentive nursing. She also tackled the spring tasks around the farm, mending fences, cleaning out the chicken coop, preparing the garden for planting. Martha continued to visit daily, her practical assistance and cheerful company, a blessing Willa hadn't expected. Through her, Willa learned more about the town's happenings during her absence, including the fact that her father had turned down several offers to buy the farm over the past year. "He wouldn't consider it," Martha explained as they shelled peas on the porch. "Said it was your inheritance, not his to sell." "He never mentioned that in his letters," Willa mused, troubled by the revelation. Had her father been struggling more than he'd let on? "James isn't one to burden others with his troubles," Martha said gently. "Especially not his children." When her father was strong enough to sit up for extended periods, Willa brought up the subject. "Why didn't you tell me about the offers for the farm?" James Montgomery sighed, gazing out the bedroom window at the fields beyond. "Didn't want you worrying. You were building a life in Silverton." "But if you needed money—" "It wasn't about money," he interrupted. "This land was your mother's dream as much as mine, our legacy to you and your brothers." His weathered hand covered hers. "I couldn't sell it without consulting you, and I didn't want to call you back before you were ready." Willa's throat tightened with emotion. "I would have come." "I know," he said simply. "That's why I didn't ask." As the week progressed, Willa found her thoughts turning frequently to Noah. Would he really return as promised? And why did the prospect fill her with such anticipation? She was in the barn, repairing a harness on the 5th day after his departure, when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Her heart quickened as she stepped outside, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun. Noah rode into the yard, but he wasn't alone. A wagon followed behind, driven by a young man Willa didn't recognize. "Miss Montgomery," Noah greeted her, dismounting with a smile that transformed his serious face. "I hope we're not intruding." "Not at all," Willa assured him, suddenly conscious of her work-stained dress and loosened hair. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow. Got my affairs in order sooner than expected." He gestured to his companion who was climbing down from the wagon. "This is Daniel Hayes, works for me sometimes. Brought some supplies I thought might be useful." Daniel tipped his hat politely. "Madam." Willa returned the greeting, then peered curiously at the wagon's contents. Seeds, tools, even what appeared to be young fruit tree saplings were carefully arranged in the bed. "What's all this?" she asked, turning back to Noah. "Noticed your orchard could use some new stock," he explained, almost apologetically, "and thought you might need seed corn after being away." The thoughtfulness of it touched her deeply. "That's incredibly generous, but I can't possibly consider it neighborly," Noah interrupted gently. "You can pay it back when the harvest comes in." Before she could protest further, her father's voice called from the porch where he sat in a rocking chair, enjoying his first extended time outdoors since his illness. "Mr. Calloway, come up, and let me thank you properly for bringing my daughter home." Introductions were made, hands shaken, and gratitude expressed with the straightforward sincerity of men accustomed to plain speaking. Willa watched her father and Noah together, struck by the instant rapport between them despite their difference in age. "You have a fine piece of land here, Mr. Montgomery," Noah observed, looking out across the rolling fields. "Built it with these hands," her father confirmed proudly. "With my Elizabeth beside me every step. Willa's mother," he added in explanation. "I wish I could have known her," Noah said with genuine respect. "Must have been quite a woman, that she was." James Montgomery's eyes crinkled with remembered love. "Seems to me her daughter takes after her in all the best ways." Willa felt herself blushing at her father's praise, and the way Noah's gaze turned to her, warm with something more than simple agreement. Daniel cleared his throat politely. "Should I start unloading, Mr. Calloway?" "Yes, of course." Noah turned back to James. "With your permission, sir, we'd like to help get your fields ready for planting. Spring's moving along and time's short." "I'd welcome the help," James admitted. "Not as young as I used to be, even before this illness." Martha appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "And you won't be doing any plowing yourself for a while yet, James Montgomery, doctor's orders." For the rest of the afternoon, Noah and Daniel worked in the fields with the plow horse, preparing the soil while Willa and Martha planted the kitchen garden. The easy camaraderie of shared work filled the farmyard with conversation and occasional laughter. As evening approached, Martha insisted that Noah and Daniel stay for dinner. "I've made enough to feed an army," she declared, "and it's too late to start back now." No one argued with her logic, though Willa caught a look between Noah and her father that suggested some prior arrangement. The meal was served on the porch to accommodate James, who was tiring but refused to miss the company. After dinner, as the sky deepened toward twilight, Daniel excused himself to check on the horses. Martha, with remarkable subtlety for such a forthright woman, suggested that James needed his evening medicine, effectively leaving Willa and Noah alone on the porch. For a moment neither spoke, the evening sounds, crickets, distant cattle, the creaking of the windmill filling the comfortable silence. "Your father's a good man," Noah said finally. "I can see why you came back for him." "He's all the family I have nearby," Willa replied. "My brother's right, but it's not the same as being present." Noah nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Family is precious. Once lost, it can't be replaced. Is that why you stayed in Wyoming after your sister moved to Denver? Willa asked. To stay connected to what you'd lost. The question seemed to surprise him. He considered it for a long moment, watching the first stars appear. Maybe, in part, this land was where we made our new start after the war. It holds memories. Good ones, I hope. Mostly, he admitted, though the first winters were hard. But there's something about working your own land, answering to no one but yourself and the seasons. He trailed off, then added quietly, it's freedom in its way. I understand that, Willa said. I felt something similar teaching. Creating my own little world in that schoolhouse, watching children grow under my guidance. Do you miss it? Noah's gaze was direct, genuinely interested in her answer. Yes, she admitted. But I've missed this too, the farm, the rhythm of country life, even the smell of fresh turned earth. She smiled slightly. Is that strange? Not to me, Noah assured her. Some people belong to a place as much as to other people. Sounds like you might belong to both. The insight struck Willa as remarkably perceptive. Perhaps I do, I just don't know how to reconcile them. Noah was silent for a moment, then said carefully, the school in Pine Ridge lost their teacher last month. Married a railroad man and moved to Cheyenne. Willa straightened, surprised. How do you know that? A hint of color touched Noah's cheeks. I may have asked about it in town when I was gathering supplies. You asked about the school, for me. The thought warmed her unexpectedly. Seemed like information you might want, he said simply. Before Willa could respond, Martha returned, effectively ending their private conversation. But throughout the evening, as they sat together, listening to her father's stories and Martha's gentle teasing, Willa found herself increasingly aware of Noah's presence beside her, and of possibilities opening before her like flowers to the sun. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. Noah and Daniel were determined to finish plowing the north field before they left, while Willa and Martha focused on planting the vegetable garden and setting the new fruit tree saplings. James supervised from his chair, offering advice and occasional direction. By midday, the work was well advanced. Willa brought water to Noah and Daniel in the field, pausing to admire their progress. You've accomplished more in a day and a half than I could have in a week, she admitted, handing Noah a dipper of cool water. He drank deeply before answering. Many hands make light work. Your father would have done the same for any neighbor. Still, Willa insisted, we're grateful. I'm grateful. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, something warm and promising that made Willa's breath catch. Daniel, with tactful timing, suddenly remembered a tool he needed from the wagon, leaving them momentarily alone among the freshly turned furrows. I'll be returning to my ranch tomorrow, Noah said after a moment. But I'd like to come back if that's agreeable. To check on the saplings, help with the corn planting. That would be very welcome, Willa replied, her heart beating faster at the prospect. Noah took a step closer, his voice lowering. It's not just the farm that draws me back, Willa. The directness of the statement, the use of her first name, sent warmth spreading through her. I'm glad, she admitted softly. I've enjoyed your company. A smile broader and more open than any she'd seen from him transformed his face. Is that a polite way of saying you don't mind having me underfoot? Willa laughed, the sound carrying across the fields. Something like that. Their moment was interrupted by Martha calling from the house, announcing that dinner was ready. As they walked back together, Noah's hand brushed hers, not quite taking it, but not quite an accident either. The meal was lively, with her father in good spirits and Martha clearly enjoying having a full table to feed. Noah and Daniel shared stories of ranch life, while Willa found herself describing her adventures in teaching with more animation than she'd expected. As the afternoon waned, it became clear that Noah and Daniel needed to start their journey back if they wanted to reach town by nightfall. "You've done more than enough," James assured them as they prepared to leave. "This old farm hasn't seen such activity in years." "We'll be back next week," Noah promised, shaking the older man's hand, "to help with the planting." Willa walked them to the wagon, where Daniel tactfully busied himself checking the harness, giving her and Noah a moment of privacy. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." "I meant what I said," Noah told her, his voice low. "It's not just the farm." Willa's heart fluttered. "I'll look forward to your return then." His hand reached out, briefly touching her cheek in a gesture so gentle it almost undid her composure. "Take care of your father and yourself." "I will," she promised. She stood in the yard long after they'd gone, watching until the wagon disappeared from sight, her mind full of gray eyes and quiet words that promised more than mere neighborly assistance. The week that followed passed in a whirl of activity. Dr. Lewis pronounced James well enough to move about the house and yard freely, though still prohibited from heavy labor. Willa divided her time between caring for her father, maintaining the farm, and helping Martha with the countless tasks that made up rural life. She also paid a visit to Pine Ridge's town council, inquiring discreetly about the vacant teaching position. The mayor, a portly man who'd known her since childhood, was delighted at her interest. "Would be a blessing to have you, Miss Montgomery," he assured her. "These young ones need a proper education, and you've proven your abilities in Silverton." "I haven't decided yet," Willa cautioned him. "My father's health is my priority at present." Of course," he agreed readily. "But the position is yours if you want it. School doesn't start again until September, so there's time to consider." The possibility settled in her mind, growing more appealing as she thought about it. Teaching in Pine Ridge would allow her to remain on the farm with her father while still pursuing her vocation. It seemed almost too perfect a solution. And then there was Noah. His promised return occupied her thoughts more than she cared to admit, even to herself. Martha noticed. Of course, little escaped the widow's sharp eyes, but limited her comments to knowing smiles and the occasional remark about fine men being scarce in these parts. True to his word, Noah returned the following week, this time alone but with another wagon of supplies: seed corn, more saplings, and building materials for repairs to the barn roof. His arrival sent a jolt of happiness through Willa that was impossible to disguise. "You're spoiling us with all these supplies," she teased as he unloaded the wagon. "Consider it an investment," Noah replied with a smile that made her pulse quicken. Good neighbors make for good country. This visit established a pattern. Noah would arrive every few days, sometimes staying overnight in the spare room, sometimes returning to town where he'd taken temporary lodgings to be closer. They worked together on the farm, planting corn, mending fences, repairing the barn, falling into an easy partnership that felt remarkably natural. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, sometimes with her father and Martha, sometimes alone, talking of everything and nothing. Willa learned about Noah's dreams for his ranch, his struggles during the early years, his love for the land and the freedom it represented. In turn, she shared stories of her teaching, her hopes for her students, and her conflicted feelings about having left the farm. "It wasn't abandonment," Noah assured her one evening as they watched the sunset paint the western sky in gold and crimson. "You were building a life." "But he was alone," Willa countered, guilt still nagging at her. "If Mrs. Jensen hadn't been checking on him." "He wasn't entirely alone," Noah pointed out. "This community looks after its own, and you came when he needed you most." His reassurance eased something within her. I've been thinking about the teaching position here in Pine Ridge, she admitted. It would allow me to stay with Pa but still teach. Noah's face brightened. You're considering staying then? I am, Willa confirmed, watching his reaction carefully. The farm needs tending and Pa shouldn't be alone even when he's fully recovered. And the teaching. I miss it, she said simply. Working with children, helping them grow, it's fulfilling in a way I never expected when I took the position in Silverton. Noah was quiet for a moment, then said, You'd be good for this town. These children would be lucky to have you. The sincerity in his voice warmed her. Thank you for understanding. Not everyone sees teaching as a proper calling for a woman who could be managing a household instead. Those people haven't seen you with children, Noah replied. Or don't understand that a calling isn't something to be ignored, regardless of who receives it. His perception touched her deeply. Is ranching your calling, then? Noah considered this, looking out across the fields now bathed in twilight. I think so. Though I never thought of it in those terms before. It's just where I belong. Like me in a schoolroom, Willa mused. Or on this farm, he added softly. Perhaps belonging isn't limited to just one place or purpose. The insight struck her as profound and uniquely understanding of the conflict she'd been feeling. Perhaps you're right. Their eyes met in the gathering dusk, and Willa felt the shift between them, something deepening, warming, becoming more than friendship or neighborly regard. Noah's hand found hers on the porch rail, his touch gentle but sure. Willa, he began, his voice low. I need to tell you the screen door creaked open behind them, and they moved apart as Martha appeared with a lantern. There you are. James was wondering if you'd like a game of checkers before bed, Mr. Calloway. The moment broken, Noah accepted the invitation with good grace, though Willa caught the regret in his eyes as they went inside. Whatever he had been about to say would have to wait for another time. That time came 2 days later. Noah arrived early, helping James and Willa plant the last of the corn in the south field. The work was satisfying, the rich earth promising good things to come if the weather held and the creek continued to provide water. By mid-afternoon, they had finished. James, still regaining his strength, retired to the house for a rest, leaving Willa and Noah to clean and store the tools. Your father's looking better, Noah observed as they worked, getting some color back. Dr. Lewis says he's made remarkable progress, Willa agreed. Though he still tires easily. They fell into comfortable silence for a while, the barn cool and peaceful around them. When the tasks were complete, Noah leaned against a support post, watching as Willa hung the last tool on its hook. I've been thinking, he said finally. About what you said regarding teaching in Pine Ridge. Willa turned to face him, curious. Oh, if you took that position, you'd be staying here, permanently? Yes, she confirmed. It seems the best solution for everyone. Noah took a step toward her, his expression earnest. In that case, there's something I need to say, something I've wanted to tell you since that first day by the river. Willa's heart quickened. What is it? When I saw you in that water, fighting for your life, something happened to me, he began, his voice steady despite the emotion behind his words. I knew I had to save you, not just because it was right, but because the world would be diminished if you weren't in it. He took another step closer, close enough now that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. These past weeks, working alongside you, talking with you in the evenings, they've been the best days I can remember in years. For me as well, Willa admitted softly, her pulse racing. Noah's hand reached out, gently taking hers. I'm not a man of fancy words, Willa Montgomery. I'm just a rancher who knows what matters to him. And you, your spirit, your kindness, your determination, you matter to me, more than I thought possible in so short a time. Tears pricked at Willa's eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. She blinked them back. "Noah, you don't have to say anything now," he assured her quickly. "I know it's soon, perhaps too soon, but I wanted you to know where I stand, how I feel." Willa looked up at him, this man who had saved her life, who had helped restore her farm and her sense of purpose, who looked at her with such honest admiration. The feeling that had been growing in her heart these past weeks crystallized into certainty. "It's not too soon," she said quietly. "Not when it's right." Hope bloomed in his expression. "And is it right?" In answer, Willa stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Her hand rose to his cheek, feeling the roughness of his beard against her palm. "Yes," she whispered. "I believe it is." Noah's arms encircled her, drawing her closer still. For a heartbeat, they simply looked at each other, acknowledging the significance of the moment. Then, with gentle determination, Noah lowered his head and kissed her. It was a tender kiss, reverent almost, but with an undercurrent of passion that promised deeper feelings to come. Willa responded in kind, her arms sliding around his neck as the world narrowed to just this moment, just this man. When they finally parted, Noah's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "I've wanted to do that since I pulled you from the river." "That would have been rather forward of you," Willa teased, though her own smile matched his in brightness. His laugh was warm and rich. "I've been accused of many things, but never of having impeccable timing." They stood together in the cool dimness of the barn, neither willing to break the connection between them. Noah's hand traced the line of her cheek, tender as a prayer. "I'm not asking for promises yet," he said softly. "Just a chance to court you properly, to show you what kind of life we might build together." "I'd like that," Willa replied, her heart full. "Very much." The crunch of footsteps outside warned them of approach. They stepped apart, though their eyes held the secret of what had passed between them. Martha appeared in the doorway, her sharp gaze taking in their flushed faces and bright eyes. "Well," she said with barely concealed satisfaction, "isn't this a fine afternoon?" Summer bloomed across the Wyoming landscape, transforming the rolling hills into a tapestry of green and gold. Under James Montgomery's direction and Noah's assistance, the farm flourished. The corn grew tall in the fields, the new apple saplings took root, and the vegetable garden produced bountifully under Willa and Martha's care. True to his word, Noah courted Willa with respectful determination. He rode from his ranch twice a week, sometimes staying for a few days to help with the farm work, sometimes taking Willa for rides across the countryside to show her his favorite places, a hidden waterfall, a meadow of wildflowers, a ridge that offered views clear to the distant mountains. Their courtship was witnessed with approving eyes by both James and Martha, who exchanged knowing glances whenever the young couple rode out together, or sat talking late into the evening on the porch. "He's a good man," James commented to his daughter one morning as they watched Noah mend a section of fence. "Solid, reliable." "He is," Willa agreed, unable to keep the warmth from her voice. Her father studied her face with fond understanding. "And more than that to you, I'd wager." Willa felt herself blushing. "Yes, Pa, much more." In July, Willa officially accepted the teaching position at Pine Ridge School. The town council was delighted and preparations began for the September term. Noah helped her repair and paint the small schoolhouse, working alongside other community members who welcomed the return of their former neighbor with open arms. As August ripened toward harvest, Noah invited Willa to visit his ranch. They rode out early one morning, following the trail through Eagle Pass, now safely passable in the summer drought, and into the rolling grasslands beyond. Calloway Ranch came into view as they crested a low hill, a sturdy log house with a wide porch, several outbuildings, and a corral where horses grazed in the morning sun. Beyond stretched fenced pastures where cattle dotted the landscape. "It's beautiful," Willa said honestly, taking in the peaceful scene. "It's home," Noah replied simply. "Built most of it myself over the years." They spent the day exploring the property, the house with its surprisingly comfortable furnishings, the barn where Noah showed her a new foal born just weeks earlier, the creek that provided water year-round, and the rolling pastures that supported his growing herd. As the afternoon waned, they sat on the porch, looking out over the land that Noah had shaped with his own hands. "I can see why you love it here," Willa said, accepting a cup of coffee from him. "There's a sense of permanence, of belonging." Noah nodded, settling beside her. "It took years to feel that way. At first, it was just survival, getting through each season, building what was necessary, nothing more. But over time, it became home," Willa finished for him. "Yes." His gaze was thoughtful as it moved across the familiar landscape. "Though lately I've been thinking it lacks something important." "What's that?" Noah turned to her, his expression suddenly vulnerable. "A family to share it with." The simple statement carried the weight of his hopes, his dreams for the future. Willa's heart quickened as she met his gaze. "Noah." He set his coffee aside, taking her hands in his. "I had a speech prepared," he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. "Practiced it for days. But now that you're here, it seems simpler to just say what's in my heart." He shifted, kneeling before her on the rough planks of the porch. "Willa Montgomery, from the moment I pulled you from that river, my life has been headed toward this question. I love you, your spirit, your kindness, your determination to do what's right for those you care about. I want to build a life with you, here or on your father's farm or wherever our path leads us." From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a single pearl. "This was my mother's. I'd be honored if you would wear it as my wife." Tears of joy sprang to Willa's eyes. "Yes," she whispered, then more firmly, "yes, Noah Calloway, I will marry you." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to take her in his arms. Their kiss was tender at first, then deepening with the promise of the life they would build together. When they finally parted, Willa rested her forehead against his. "I love you," she said simply. "More than I thought possible when a stern cowboy told me I wasn't dying with the wind in my hair." Noah laughed, the sound joyful and uninhibited. "Best decision I ever made, riding along that river that day." "For both of us," Willa agreed, her heart full to overflowing. They were married in October, after the harvest was in and before the winter snows began. The ceremony took place in Pine Ridge's white-steepled church, with Martha Jensen beaming in the front pew beside James Montgomery, who walked his daughter down the aisle with proud, if slightly unsteady, steps. The entire community turned out for the celebration that followed, with tables laden with food, music from local fiddlers, and dancing that continued well into the evening. Noah and Willa moved among their guests, accepting congratulations and well wishes with grateful hearts. "So, where will you make your home?" asked the mayor's wife, voicing the question many had wondered about. "Here or at the ranch?" Noah and Willa exchanged a smile before Willa answered. "Both for now. I'll continue teaching here while helping Pa with the farm, and Noah will maintain his ranch. We'll divide our time between the two places until we decide what's best long-term." It wasn't a conventional arrangement, but it suited them, two independent spirits who had found in each other not constraint but freedom to be fully themselves. That night, as they departed for their honeymoon trip to Denver, where they would also visit Noah's sister Margaret, Willa paused for a moment on the steps of the church. Snow was just beginning to fall, delicate flakes drifting down from the darkening sky. Having second thoughts, Noah teased gently, though his eyes held a question. Willa shook her head, smiling up at him. Just the opposite. I was thinking how different this moment might have been if I hadn't tried to cross that river alone. Or if I hadn't happened to be riding by, Noah added, drawing her close. Do you believe in fate? Willa asked, watching the snowflakes catch in his hair. Noah considered this, his expression thoughtful. I believe that life gives us moments of choice, and what matters is what we do with them. His hand cupped her cheek tenderly. I chose to help a stubborn woman fighting a river. You chose to trust a stranger on horseback, and here we are. Here we are, Willa echoed, rising on tiptoe to kiss him as snow swirled around them. Together. In the years that followed, the wisdom of their choices was confirmed many times over. Willa continued teaching at the Pine Ridge School, her classroom growing as the town expanded with the arrival of the railroad. Noah's ranch prospered, his careful management and fair dealings earning him respect throughout the territory. They eventually settled on a solution that honored both their callings, building a new home halfway between the ranch and the Montgomery farm, allowing them to manage both properties while maintaining their connection to Pine Ridge. James Montgomery lived to see his first grandchild born, a daughter they named Elizabeth after Willa's mother. 2 years later, a son joined the family, followed by another daughter. The children grew up between both worlds, the structured learning of their mother's schoolroom and the wide open spaces of their father's ranch. On the 10th anniversary of their meeting, Noah surprised Willa by taking her back to the spot on the Silverback River where he had pulled her from the churning waters. The river was peaceful now, flowing gently between its banks, no hint remaining of the danger it had presented that spring day. It looks so different, Willa observed, standing hand in hand with her husband on the riverbank. Hard to believe it nearly took my life. I still see it sometimes in dreams, Noah admitted quietly. You struggling against the current, me not reaching you in time. Willa squeezed his hand. But you did reach me. You saved me. Noah turned to her, love evident in every line of his face. We saved each other, I think. I was existing before you came along, Willa, not really living. And now, she asked, though she knew the answer. Now, he said, drawing her into his arms. Every day is a gift, even the hard ones. As they stood together beside the river that had brought them together, Willa reflected on the journey that had led them here, from that desperate crossing attempt to the full, rich life they had built together. She thought of her father, now content in his role as beloved grandfather, of their children, growing strong and curious, of the community that had embraced them both. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't tried to cross the river alone that day? She asked, leaning against Noah's solid warmth. He smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. No need to wonder. I would have found you eventually, Willa Calloway. Some things are just meant to be. And as they rode home together, the setting sun turning the landscape to gold around them, Willa knew with absolute certainty that he was right. Their love had been forged in a moment of crisis, tempered through challenges, and strengthened by shared purpose. It was a love as enduring as the land itself, powerful, resilient, and true. The wind caught her hair as they rode, and Willa smiled at the memory of Noah's words that fateful day. You ain't dying with the wind in your hair. Instead, she was living fully, completely, joyfully, with the wind in her hair and the love of a good man in her heart. And that made all the difference.